باغ من و بهار من، خواب من و قرار بی تو بی سر میشود، بی تو به سر نمیشود.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. As we look at what's happening today in Iran, the number of people who are killed Sunday is in dispute, with opposition websites claiming 37 dead, the Iranian government acknowledging 8 deaths. Among those killed was opposition leader Mousavi's 35-year-old nephew, Ali Mousavi, who was buried on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reporting the Obama administration is preparing targeted sanctions against discrete elements of the Iranian government, including those involved in the deadly crackdown on Iranian protesters. For more on the unrest in Iran, we're joined now by 2 guests. Here in New York, Ervand Abrahamian is with us, a CUNY Distinguished Professor of History at Baruch College, author of a number of books on Iran. His most recent, A History of Modern Iran. Maziar Bahari is with us as well, an Iranian-Canadian journalist, filmmaker, and Newsweek reporter. He was arrested while covering the unrest that followed the disputed presidential elections in June and imprisoned in Tehran for 4 months. He was released in October and joins us now on the phone from London. Let us begin with you. As you come out of jail, released in October, can you talk about what is your understanding, Maziar Bahari, of what is happening right now in the streets of Iran and in the prisons there?
Well, I think the first thing that I noticed when I came out of prison was that Iran was not a clerical state anymore. Iran moving towards the military dictatorship. The Revolutionary Guard, who are in charge of, who want to become in charge of Iran at the moment, they have taken over all strategic positions in the country, including the nuclear program. And they want to establish a military dictatorship in Iran. I think they will fail in the long run, but in the process of creating this military dictatorship, there will be much violence, bloodshed, and there will be many victims. What we witnessed a few days ago in Tehran and other cities is just the beginning of the end of the Islamic Republic as we know it, or even maybe as the government on.
And what do you make of the government's efforts to mobilize its supporters and bring them out into the streets, as it has now attempted to do?
Well, I think the Iranian government, both before the revolution and after the revolution, whenever they lost their legitimacy, their popular legitimacy, they resorted to gather paid supporters. And I mean, when you look at newspapers before the revolution, you can see that even 3 months before the Iranian revolution, there were many gatherings in support of the Shah. And people were, there were reports of, they were calling the revolutionaries the rioters and the agents of the black imperialism. And right now it's the same thing happening, that the government, from my sources in Iran, I've to some people in Iran yesterday and today, and they said that there were many buses of people from different cities around Iran came to Tehran in order to have this gathering of the government supporters. They shut down all government offices. The Tehran metro was free yesterday for the demonstrators. So the government really tried hard to show that it's still a legitimate popular government, which is not anymore. And one of the reasons is that the government don't think that this government is not even a religious government anymore.
Maziar Bahari, can you describe what happened to you? You wrote a piece in Newsweek called 118 Days, 12 Hours, 54 Minutes. Explain how you were picked up and what happened to you in the Evin prison.
Basically, what happened was that I was reporting for Newsweek magazine, and I did a film for the BBC and also for Channel 4 News here in the UK. And one morning, the Revolutionary Guards came and they picked me up from my mother's house. They took me to prison. I was charged with espionage, and I went through 3 different phases of imprisonment. In the beginning, they charged me with masterminding the Western media in Iran, and then they charged me with espionage. And at the end, they told me that you are a media spy, and that. And when I asked them what is a media spy, my interrogator said that we still don't have a definition for it, but let's work on it together. And in that period of 118 days and 12 hours and 54 minutes, I was beaten repeatedly. I was physically tortured. I was psychologically tortured. And it's a very painful memory that I really don't like to elaborate on this at the moment.
How did you get out?
There was an international campaign for my release, as you may have witnessed in New York. Different media colleagues, especially people in Newsweek magazine and Washington Post company, campaigned for me. They used all their resources, both in the media and in the diplomatic circles all around the world, to get out. People in the UK, my wife, Paula, she was the heart of the campaign. And I think the rational elements within the Iranian government finally told the Revolutionary Guards that this is more of a liability than an asset for us in prison. So let's get him out of jail as soon as possible.
I'd like to bring Professor Eran Abrahamian into the conversation. Your sense of how the Obama administration has been dealing with these protests, the democracy protests in Iran now?
Well, I think they started off on a good footing. They wanted to distance themselves really from the problems in Iran and focus on the nuclear issue. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, they've got more and more involved in the internal issues in Iran, which doesn't help the reform movement in the country because it immediately gets associated with the past, with British-American involvement. So although it's very tempting, I think, in Washington to speak out in favor of human rights, it doesn't really have the right effect in Iran. It would be better, in fact, to leave human rights issues to human rights organizations and really focus on Iran-U.S. relations, especially on the nuclear issue.
What do you think it's most important for people around the world to understand what's happening right now in Iran and how this fits into the history of resistance in Iran?
Well, the form it's taking is a long tradition in Iran that when there is opposition, the main way is to resort to the streets. It's as American as apple pie. I mean, protest, crowding, it's been since 1890s, this has been the main way. But one thing to remember is these protests only succeed when they're accompanied by strikes, general strikes, bazaar strikes, oil strikes, nationwide strikes. And that's what brought down the Shah's regime. So far, the demonstrations have not grown into strikes. So it's, I think, premature to see the regime as it is on its last legs. Until we actually see strikes, we have to be careful about writing an obituary of the regime.
And is that because the Iranian government still maintains firm control over the labor movement?